Hi. I recently had the opportunity to talk with my friend, colleague, and a Charter Cordus Mundi member, Cailin Marcel Manson. We ended up talking for so long that we decided the best thing to do would be to break our conversation out into a couple different portions. So here is part one of that conversation. Before we actually begin, let me tell you a little bit about this rather impressive musician. Callan has enjoyed an international career as an operatic concert soloist, as a conductor, and as a master teacher with many organizations, and has built a sterling reputation over an extensive 20-year career encompassing both baritone and tenor repertoire, known for his exceptional musicianship, his keen dramatic instincts, and his vocal flexibility. No kidding. Cailin has held positions as music director and conductor laureate of the Chamber Symphony of Atlantic City, artistic director and conductor of the Montgomery County Youth Orchestra, chair of vocal studies at the Hazleton Conservatory for the Performing Arts, and as director of music at the Putney School. He has also served as a member of the faculty of the Vermont Governor's Institute on the Arts and the Performing Arts Institute of Wyoming Seminary. Cailin is currently the Director of Choral Activities and Music Performance at Clark University in Worcester, Mass., and is the Artistic Director and Conductor of the Germantown Concert Chorus in Philadelphia, Music Director of the Bennington County Choral Society in Vermont, Music Director of Barn Opera in Vermont, and Music Director of the Keene Chorale in New Hampshire. A recognized advocate for community-based classical music organizations, Cailin serves on the board of directors for Choral Arts New England and the Wagner in Vermont Festival, and is a member of the International Conductors Guild, League of American Orchestras, Opera America, American Choral Directors Association, and the National Association of Negro Musicians. Here's part one of our conversation.
You know,
Yeah, well, actually, that's a great place to start. When I was sitting and thinking about how do I describe you, I mean, we come up with like at the same time, all at once in a rush, we come up with conductor and singer and educator, and I realized not only those three, but impresario, right? Well,
yeah.
uh, so maybe that's a good place to start. How do you manage that level of detail while being conductor, singer, and educator, as well as literally like concert promoter or
And doing all this other stuff. Well, it it's it's not even normally I would say, oh, it's funny because but it's not actually very funny at all. They're completely all of those skill sets correlate. You know, and I guess we just don't think of them that way actively. But if you're constantly in the flow of doing them, you realize how much doing any one of those things well allows you to do all of them, right? So being a conductor, it's funny. I actually presented recently, as like about 2 years ago. I presented about the art of conducting as like really as community leadership, right? Like that's really what being if you're really good at the craft of conducting, that's one thing. But that isn't but there are many people who are good at the craft of conducting that aren't necessarily great at what it means to be a conductor. And and I think it's so funny. Like in Britain, they refer. When they have choral conductors, especially of kids choirs, they call them like animateurs, right? Like, like which is like they get people going, and that's sort of what I've really lamped on in the last, especially over the last few years, um, in a more concrete way. I've always felt this way, but I've been able to kind of syncretize it into the fact that being someone that has to have you have to know everything that's going on. You have to know who's playing what when, but beyond who's playing what when, I mean that would be like being a music accountant, right? Like but you have to know, you have to have an idea of how how they should do it, or how you would like them to do it, how they, how they fit into the big picture, and then have an idea of where it needs to end up. So you're not so it would be a much easier, proposition to be like, okay, just, keep track of when everyone's supposed to come in, and, keep track of, how loud or soft or whatever, those type of things, what I like to call being the mixer man.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, but there's so much more to it than that. You're 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 kind of being a conduit of energy. And so so when I'm thinking about running a program, which is a whole other different thing. I mean, it's not just programming, but running a program, which means you have other people who are working with you or under you, or you're supervising them, or you're trying to manage all of these different pieces so that everyone feels, one, that they're contributing something, one, that you're listening, and that you really value what they bring to the table, and that because you value what they bring to the table, that however you're steering the ship allows everyone involved to be, not all the time because that's just life, but mostly geared towards their highest and best use.
Yeah.
So you're not just like, okay, it's a bunch of busy work and I don't need to be doing it because I'm so I'm just gonna give it to you to do it. No, it's like, you're willing. I actually find myself, I don't understand why it happens, but I see people that I work with like nonplussed and pleasantly bewildered half the time about how much of the minutia I'm willing to take on. Some of it is because I do have that control freak streak. And, you just have it. You're like, okay, I want it to get done, and I want it to get done efficiently, whatever. But there's also this piece where some of that also is like, I don't want you to be saddled with that. Like, it's something that I know.
Yeah.
I guess that's the other piece of, like, I guess, a managerial style, which I think is kind of, it shouldn't be unique, but I know I've worked in many different places where it is unique. Where it's like, I know that this is kind of grunt work, but I know I could kill off this grunt work actually pretty fast.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna do it rather than give it to you and then be mad that it's not done fast. Like, why am I gonna set myself up for that?
Amen.
So, I know, plus, if you understand people, and I think that's the other thing, honoring and understanding people. If you understand people, like, okay, you will do your best to do this, but it's not actually where your gifts are. Like, having you crunch a bunch of numbers is not really like your twist. You can do it, but if I can do it and be fine with it, and the buck stops with me, so I don't have to review it, I might actually have you look over it just so I have another set of eyes on it. But I'm not gonna. Why do that? So I think, that's a roundabout way of saying, it's all related. I can't. I don't think. I don't think. I know people are successful being impresarii or impresarios, without having all of those irons going. They have something. They have a gift for it. They can see an opportunity. They can really. They know how to spot talent and to build a team around a project that'll work, and then to kind of steer it. But I think for me, all of the things that I am are what allow me to do what I do. And honestly, I could learn. I've only, I'll say it truthfully. I mean, this because we've known each other a lot. I've only recently, maybe in the last 8 years, really been been good about promoting my own work. I'm usually so much about doing the work, right? Like, I'm like, I just want to do the work. Come and see it, it's good, it has community impact, all of that stuff. But, over, like, just recently, I've dedicated a lot of time about promoting what it is I'm doing.
I think they may have helped you with that
in those
Absolutely.
in that small series of concerts that you and I did together, to which virtually nobody showed up. Um,
Mm.
which is no reflection on you. It's more a reflection on the promoter. But I think I helped you learn the lesson about promoting, right? By
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
knowing what not to do, perhaps.
Well, no, but it's also interesting because I find I find myself doing I do not think that this is going to be a piece of my business or whatever I do, but I found myself consulting a lot, like people asking me to step in and facilitate, like stepping in and facilitating like a board retreat or things like that. Things like, like because I have an ability to listen to a bunch of different people and to, as I say, synthesize, syncretize it into something that makes sense. So, and then to poke in a loving way to get at what an issue actually is. Uh, could be that.
I'm writing down poke in a loving way because we'll be doing a little poking in a loving way here, as we go forward. Um, I, Related to all of this, you find yourself running a music program.
Well, it's interesting because, well, I mean, let's face it. When I moved, it's funny. I've been running music programs a long time. I didn't, I don't think about it that way. But then when you have to look at your CV, you look at resume, like I've been running music programs. I mean, when I think of it, it's like I went to school and I did this and I did that, and then it's like almost as soon as I was done my schooling, I jumped right into running music programs of some kind. Like it was just right off the bat, and it's it's a very odd thing. I guess I'll put it this way. It's a one thing when you're somebody who, I mean, and when you're in school, you're training. My training especially is to be a soloist. I did of course study conducting seriously, and so I had some of that. But going back to what I said before, that has nothing to do. Studying the craft of how to do the artistic stuff really doesn't have much to do with leadership. And so usually someone starts and they get good at whatever it is they do and they kind of work their way up to positions of leadership. And I started in leadership, if you think about it. So I mean, and I'm not going to say maybe I was all that great at it at first. I mean, I guess I was because people kept asking me to do it. but and still do, but I think that there's the piece of having, there are two or three things. There's a piece of having, like, seeing where something is, whether it's an institution or an organization or something like that. Getting a sense of where the people who are already invested in it, whether it's donors or a board or constituents or students or faculty, like what they've seen and where they see, like where the bodies are buried, and what they would hope for. And sometimes what I find to be really, really disappointing, that's the word I'm really looking for, disappointing, is that in many places that I've worked, there wasn't there, not that it didn't even need to be clear. There just wasn't a sense of what anyone hoped for it to be.
Okay.
So when you're entering, whether you're entering in a consulting way, but definitely when you're entering in a leadership way, it's like y'all have no clue what you want this to be. It's not even what you knew what it was, what it's been, and it's kind of been spinning its wheels. But so many people, from students to faculty to administrators, whatever, would have no real idea, no vision of what the program could do or could look like or should look like. And so when I get it, they're like, yes, that's why we hired you. La la la. I'm like, that's nice, but I don't exist, like the work that I do, especially if you're in a school or an institution. Like, I mean, I'm currently at a university. Like, the work that I do doesn't exist in a vacuum. it's a part of something else. And so if I'm the new person stepping in to do things, either one, you need to tell me what it is that you hope for this to do, and we can work on it together, or I'm just going to end up being a bull in a china shop, going like, "This is what needs to be done," and then you might be a little upset. So it's like, well, like you told me to do this. This is the task to which I've been assigned. I'm doing it to the best of my ability. And when I engaged you in this, when I asked this right off the bat, you didn't have anything to say.
So
So
what about the situation you're in now?
well, it's funny. Like I mean, this will be public, so it's fine. And the situation I'm in now is that being a director of choral activities is not a new thing at any university, right? I mean, if you have a choral program, you got that. But the program, the program at Clark is really it's interesting. It's really robust for it to be such a small university, um, and for it to really not be kind of like that lockstep, like this is the conservatory style program, this is the pathway you must take to get this baccalaureate in blah blah blah. Um, it's very progressive with a small p in that sense, where students kind of, I mean, it's a liberal arts university, so students come in, many students come in undeclared. They figure out what it is that they might want to do, and then they kind of work their way through the rest of their baccalaureate as it is. And we have a number of students in the music program that are double majors. So they're doing a music major while doing a computer science major. And I was never that. I mean, I can take a lot of punishment. I was never a glutton for that kind of punishment, especially not in academe. But 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 hey, I mean, I don't. It's not as bad as like the choose your own adventure books that we used to have. Where it's like if you take a left, turn to page 253. But it does present a bunch of challenges. And the one thing that I would say is that I am, so right as it sits, before, most people who sat in the position of director of choral activities, it was a part-time faculty position. And and really that's what they did. Like they conducted the choirs, they might have taught voice if they were qualified to do that. They might have taught a couple of ad hoc courses, sort of as a lecturer sort of thing. This is the first time that the institution has had someone in the position. So it's like I'm the director of the choir activity, but I'm also the director of music performance. So I oversee all of the music ensembles. I also am completely really dedicated to the performance part of the music major. So, so usually, and that's what I mean, I'm talking amongst colleagues, they're like, oh yeah, we're doing voice juries or whatever. I'm like, no, I'm doing the singers and the instrumentalists. Like, I'm not teaching any of the instrumentalists, but I am over their performance programs. So I'm working with the piano faculty and the string faculty, and to help them figure out and suss out what their students are needing. I'm listening to all of those juries, and actually I actually instated juries because they didn't have, they had talked about it but they hadn't done it, and so I instated it, like literally my first semester there. I'm like, there's no reason why you shouldn't have this. Let's do it. Like we can do it, but we can do it in a more Clark culture centric way. So it's not going to be like, Achtung, you must do this, and this. Which I don't necessarily, even as a conservatory trained, conservatory style student, I still didn't necessarily think that that served everyone.
Yeah.
But what makes it more congruent with the culture of the institution is that I'm like, the front line person is the private instructor. They're the one that works with them. So, yes, as they ascend, rank in terms of class, and as they go towards graduation, they need to be able to do more in an academic term, right? But, I'm not going to say they need to have a English and a German and an Italian and a French when the person basically came in there having a nice voice but having no freaking clue what to do.
Okay.
Like if the person comes in the door and they're like, "Oh, I sang in choir in high school for, whatever, and I really want to study, but I don't really read music and whatever." How are you going to get them to memorize like getting that person to memorize three pieces of repertoire in a 14-week term is it's a little crazy, even in an educational sense. I mean, you can get them to do it, but at least for me, like my goal is if this person is starting from jump, even if they have like some musical oral experience. First things first, if you're an educator, you want them to have good technique. So like, how about we just teach them to sing? Like, just how about they learn how to breathe and sing a legato line? Can we just start there? And if they can do that with one song from memory, I don't care if it's in English or in Italian or whatever. Let's make sure they can do that.
Yeah, amen. Amen.
So okay, maybe they're not like ticking off all the boxes that so many other people are, but at the same time, how many people like, I almost could say like if you were at a Juilliard or at a Curtis or something like that, you would expect that they would have a little more on the ball coming in the door because it's that selective an institution. And truth be told, even many students that are that gifted might not even have an idea of how they're doing what they're doing. Like they just have very naturally well coordinated voices. When it's an instrumentalist, it's a different story. Like they're building their technique as they go. Like you're not want someone's not wandering in the doors of a major conservatory playing like the whole Goldberg variations as a savant. You know what I mean? Like that, and maybe they're a couple, but they're not that many. They've had piano lessons, they've practiced, they whatever. But with singers, it's different. Some of them just came in and are like, "Wow, I can sing Caro Nome. I have no idea how I'm doing it.
Uh,
I just hit the high notes and I go ah, and that's great." And we're like, "Wow, that's amazing. Now let's give you a clue." And that's literally, and I find that that's literally what what the challenge is, and what I've kind of been really really loved about embracing about building building a pedagogical program around that. Plus, as you were saying, as I was alluding to, I'm the first person at the institution to hold sort of I don't know if you want to call it a jurisdiction responsibility, like that it is the responsibility of this professorship to look at that piece of the program in particular and make it fly because they've had a killer musicological program. They've got three tenured professors who are killing it in terms of musicological research and writing critical editions and writing new music and music with tech and mixed performance, like they're doing that, but you have to get to a certain point to be able to. So so skill building is something, and so that's a part of what I'm doing. But what you might think about is like I find that I'm sort of prepared to do that because I've spent so much time outside of that educational work working with people
bingo.
who
I was,
working.
I was about to say to you was the word community building comes right back round full circle again. That leadership part of that and that ability, that not only ability but that willingness to relate to everybody in the ensemble and everybody in the group. And yeah,
Well,
oh,
and seeing where they are, and seeing where they are, and not in any way I don't know. I'm at this point. Sometimes I stop. I like stutter a little bit just because because I'm like, am I going to edit myself? No, I'm not. I think that many times when you have groups of people, mixed ability, backgrounds all over the place, there's one of the things that, I mean, I know we've both seen it. I definitely have seen it. And I've heard, I mean, this is the thing of like, I've had these people who are in their late 60s, early 70s come into a community chorus, come into one of my community choirs. And literally after, maybe they came for sometimes it's the first rehearsal, sometimes they've come to three before they've decided to sign on the dotted line and say, here are my dues. I'm down, let's go. Um, Say to me like, I haven't really, like, I've always loved singing, and I sing in the hymns at church, but I don't sing in the choir because when I was in fifth grade, my teacher told me I couldn't sing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or when I was in high school, my teacher told me I couldn't sing. Or when I had sung in choir in elementary school and high school, and then I got to college, and unless I was a music major or unless I could pass the audition, I couldn't be in the choir.
Right. Yeah.
And and I'm like, we're looking at like it's and it doesn't and it never it's crazy making to me because I've heard this so like I've heard that story in so many different incarnations in so many different ways everywhere I've worked, and I've worked a lot of different places all over the place.
I'm with you.
And I'm like, there's like generations of missed opportunity there.
Amen.
You know, I sit there and I wonder. I'm like, well, I'm like, yeah, I'm glad that I mean, people are where they're supposed to be. Yes, I believe in that kind of providence. But like, I just sit there and I'm like, what? I'm like, I'm coming into your life. I came into this chorus as music director, and it's coming into your life when you're in your late 60s. What if someone had caught you when you were in your 30s? Like what? And why didn't that happen? I mean, yes, life does different things. People make different choices. It's not completely the fault of the music world or whatever, but there is some blame to to be laid at the feet of that.
I wholeheartedly agree. I tell at the beginning of each semester, I tell my community choir, I stand in front of them at the beginning of the rehearsal, and I say to them, "Congratulations, you all just passed your audition." Right? And they all chuckle, but they get it immediately. And you see everybody go, ah, right? And chill. And that's your first step into, I tell every kid that I teach guitar, I say to them, there's nothing you can play that's wrong.
Mm.
Right? And in guitar, it's really easy because if it's wrong, it can only be off by a half step.
It's so
Right? Right? Guitar, it means move up a fret or take the damn string and bend it.
Yeah.
And face like you meant to do that, right?
I say that all the time. I'm like, it's like just go. I meant to do that. I meant to do that.
Well, so a combination question. I want to know at the same time, kind of like what goes on in terms of performance at Clark that you're doing, and how is that going on or permutating in the era of COVID?
So it's interesting. I didn't expect. No one no one knew that COVID was coming, right? I mean, none of us knew it, and at the same time, I haven't been at Clark that long. I mean, I'm at 1.5 years now in there, and so and for something like that to hit in the middle of your second semester of your first year at an institution where you're still kind of learning the lay of the land and where all the operational barbs are, it's a very it gives one pause. you know um, but at the same time, I'll say this. you know I couldn't also have expected, especially when you're thinking about like a school that is it's a wonderful institution, and yet it's not like, it's not like one of the biggies, it's not one of the ones. And so you sit there, and everyone, of course, because we're America, and we like, and it's not America if we don't stratify.
Go on.
It's
Go.
not America if we don't stratify. So everyone is literally looking at, oh, what is Harvard doing? What is Princeton doing? What is Stanford doing? What is Yale doing? Like, and that's great. But what I found to be interesting is that, they had, I mean, across the country, they had these horror stories of, oh, they opened for a week and now they're closing, whatever. And so I couldn't, especially, I'm just going to say, especially in an area of the country where we literally had essentially like a six state. I feel like we had a six state, seven state country
Yeah.
for a large portion of this whole year, because it was really like we were literally in one of the few places in the country where you could go across state borders and not have to deal with, oh, you need to quarantine for a large part. It started up again when things started to uptick near the end of the fall, but you know so that was a plus. But to be at an institution that sunk so much resources and handled it so well that we were able to get through essentially the entirety of our semester with people on campus, with a significant number of students on campus, having hybrid and in-person classes, of course, with like, an occupancy cap for each room and da da da. And and to make that happen, the simple fact that I worked with two colleagues on the string faculty to put together a series of concerts on the music of African American composers, of Black composers, that I came up with the name for and all that. And then there was the English department did a conference, because someone who taught at Clark was, I guess, wrote one of the first like compendiums. His name is Winston Napier. One of the first compendiums on African American literary theory. And so they did online conference about that. That then our concert series, Genius Children, dovetailed very nicely into, and we did a talk back about like the programming. And so and it was live streamed. The fact that I was able to help my advisee navigate their way through doing a senior recital with no audience but live streamed. The fact that the concert band and the jazz people, jazz bands rehearsed outside, they filmed, they did that. My chamber chorus, our large choir couldn't rehearse. There wasn't a space to accommodate them. Like, it tends to be between 60 to 80, give or take, this. But the chamber chorus rehearsed in person every week, all the way through. Essentially until the final week until the final week of the semester. So, it was very. It's not that it was easy street. I mean, yeah, there was testing protocols and all that, which which one got used to, and they became part of the routine. But it was just you don't expect one to be in a position to have to figure out how to teach in all these different modalities. And then the second thing is you don't expect to be at a place that would handle it so well. So, and for me, I've always been like, hey, I'm like, I've always been leveraging technology, because it's like some of it is as simple as pressing the easy button. It's just like, at the Staples commercial they used to do, I'm like, okay, here you go. When I was at Putney, I was teaching music theory. I was teaching most of the academic music classes. So I was teaching music theory, whatever. I've been teaching theory a long time. But I leveraged, technology so that they could use a cloud-based, browser-based, learning modules, so that they didn't have to sit in the MIDI lab all the time or find a way to the music building to do their theory work. Like, you don't need to be in the MIDI lab to do rhythm tapping or to do your oral skills training. Like, there are programs online. And actually, I mean, look, actually, I'm like, I'm not averse to it. I'm like, yes, let's use some of that video game mindset. Like, you need to get past level 3 in these next 2 weeks. That was literally the homework. You need to get past level 3 in order to keep pace. You need to be past level 3. It's browser based, cloud based. It sends me all of your assessments get sent to me electronically. I can sit there and say, "Oh, you're really great at rhythm tapping. You're really good at the nomenclature. Your interval hearing needs a lot of work, so you really need to practice and drill that, and you can do that on your own."
Yeah.
You
Wow.
know, I don't need to sit in a room banging notes at a piano going, "What one is this?" Like, why do I need to? That's not, I mean, that's what I'm saying. That's not me at my highest and best use. And that's not them either. They could sit there, they could be at the dining hall table
Right.
with their little earbuds in, or taking a hike through the woods with their earbuds in, going, ding, ding. You know, like, why do I need to do that? That's not work that I could do. A computer could do that so much better
Well,
and
and
more accurately and with a lot less consternation than I can.
well, and we've talked a little bit about the idea that a necessity is the mother of invention, right?
Absolutely.
We're a lazy yet resourceful species when it
Hmm.
right down to it, at least thus far. And I'm very much enamored by the idea that some of what we've gained here in the new technological realm, we're going to carry on forever. It becomes more arrows in our quiver, if you will, right?
Well, and I hope so. I mean, I really do. I mean, no one wants to be in, the far, like the distanced world forever, right? But I really do hope that we, whether it's like artistic institutions, educational institutions, that we learn now that we figured out a way, essentially, when we look at the way even with the vaccine and it being like, we're gonna be, once March hits, we'll have been in this world for a year.
Oh, yeah,
And so we've been able to allow, like, people have been able to get their way through academic programs. We'll see what the gist is, but people have been able to find their way through academic programs. I mean, I'll tell you, like, I'm really proud of my, at least, the students that I see. Like, I watched all of their jury performances. I'm like, wow, they actually are significantly better technically and musically than when they started, than when I last saw them last year. I mean, they had juries at the end of last semester in May while we were just still figuring out how to do this. And now it's December and I'm like, wow, like that their touch on the keyboard is much better. The legato is much better. Those high notes are coming out clearer. This person is not swallowing their tone and birthing, a melon out their backside. This is amazing. I love this. They're actually improving, even with me not in the room. So, so there's something to be said. Is it ideal? No. Could some of those developments taken less time if I was in the room with them? Yes,
yeah,
or maybe not. But I hope that we continue as a culture, as a society, that we continue to leverage the positives
amen.
of what this has allowed us to do, so that the things that we really need. See, this is what I've really hoped. I've talked about this at work. I've talked about this in on a couple of other panels, but that the stuff that we really need to be in the room for, we prioritize that.
Yes,
So, why do none of us, I'm sorry, I'm like, none of us should ever have to worry about how do we schedule a venue to have a rehearsal. You don't need, let's be frank about this. Unless you're trying to have a social party, you don't need to have a room to have a board meeting at this point. You don't. Get up on the Zoom, share screen, and
yeah,
make it happen. As a matter of fact, those meetings, faculty meetings, board meetings, like, they have run so much more efficiently on this.
that makes sense.
It's like, okay, none of us, we've all been staring at screens all day. This is business. We want to handle it and jump off to the next thing.
Yeah,
Boom, 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 done.
yeah. prototype for Zoom is Hollywood Squares.
I've referred to it as Hollywood Squares so many times, and people are like, and of course my students are looking at me like, huh? I'm like, no, 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 just look it up. Go on YouTube. You can watch old episodes.
Okay. Yeah, no, I hear that.